Good day, everyone. Today I'm talking to Sony Gabriel, who's a co-founder and CEO of Minerva, and Geetha Ramaswamy, who's a co-founder and CTO of Minerva. Good day, Sony, and good day, Geetha. Thank you so much for giving me your time today.
Great to meet you, Tony. Thank you.
Likewise. Thank you, Tony.
Thank you, guys. And just to let you know, Geetha is joining us from US and Sony early morning in India. I believe it's 6 a.m.
Yeah, it's slightly after 6.
Are you guys happy for me to move into our first question?
Sure, absolutely.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Sony and Geetha, can you please take turns and share about the place you were born, your education, the things that you enjoy doing, and one thing that the public might not know about you?
Sure, I'll go first. I was born in a place called Mavelikara, which is in Kerala. I did my early schooling there in a private residential school till my 12th. And like the norm, I took engineering entrance and medical entrance. I landed up in TKM College of Engineering, Kollam, where I did computer science and engineering. And that's where I met Geetha, who was my best friend and now my business partner. So I've known her for close to 30 years now. In terms of what I like to do, I love listening to music. I'm an outdoor kind of person, so I like outdoor activities, sports, hiking, and the like. I like going on long drives. One thing that people may not know about me, other than people who know me really well, while I wrote the entrance, I had got to both medical and engineering. So had I not picked up computer science and TKM, I might have been a doctor now.
Good on you, Sony. And I'm sure you would have made a good doctor. And Geetha, your turn now.
Okay, awesome. I was born and brought up in Kollam, originally called Quailon in Kerala. I did my early schooling at Mount Carmel Convent, which, if you know, it is an Anglo-Indian girls' high school located right by the sea. So your classes in the building was, right next to the ocean. Very cool. After this, I attended engineering college at TKM, and which is where, as Sony mentioned, I met him, and we've been best friends ever since. And it's been almost 30 years now. And after engineering, I moved to the US, got married, and I did my master's at the local University of Illinois at Chicago. And with regards to what I like to do, I really enjoy reading books and listening to music like most people. And I love practicing yoga. Something people may not know about me, again, nothing very exciting, is that I am an unabashed bibliophile. I buy way more books than I can read.
Good on you, Geetha. And I think that's what my wife tells me too. Like, I end up buying a lot of books, but I never end up reading any of them. I mean, just a few. So it's good to hear that, I'm in good company. And Sony and Geetha, moving on to our next question. Can you please share about your work experiences before you started Minerva? And what lessons did you both bring forward from your previous work experiences into your venture?
Sure. So after college, I briefly worked in ER&DC, which is Electronic Research and Development Center, where I was a junior research fellow. After that, I worked at a short stint in Bangalore and Pune, working for 2 companies before I joined the Y2K bandwagon and moved to the US. So I reached the US in 98 and I was there till 2003. While in the US, I worked for 2 companies. One was a more established product company, and the second was a startup. And I gained a lot of experience working for the startup there. That's when I caught the bug, right? I moved back to India in 2003, and I started a consulting firm. And this startup was my first client, the one that I used to work in the US, right? In 2006, I felt like, and I've been working mostly with startups and smaller companies, so I wanted to gain experience of working in a large corporate. So I joined IBM. I was there for close to 3.5 years in IBM. Bangalore in their global services division. And later on, I went and did my executive MBA from IIM Bangalore, and entrepreneurial bug again started resurfacing. And that's when I said, okay, I'll probably do something of my own, right? Now, things that I learned while working for the product startup is be customer focused, right? That's probably the biggest lesson that I learned while working for the startup. You have to have kind of like an obsessive passion of making sure that your customers are happy. Now, what I learned while working with IBM is having process in place so that once your company takes off, it's those processes which are going to help you tide over to the next level. That's been my experience.
Excellent, Sony. Thank you for sharing that. And Geetha, would you like to jump in?
Sure. So after my master's, I joined AT&T here in Chicago, and I was there for the next 12 years. I started as an application developer, but in particular, the last 5 years I was there was probably the most exciting. I believe I grew my data legs during that time because I had the opportunity to contribute to an application that was responsible for service provisioning and activation of key products from AT&T, such as IPTV, high-speed internet, etc. Where this helped me is that there was a massive amounts of data that needed to be mined in order to do problem solving. So that was very exciting. And in 2011, I left AT&T and worked for another company called Segeza, where I was the product owner for their data analytics product. So throughout these experiences, I fell more and more in love with data and the feeling that I can build products from scratch incrementally with a solid execution and deliver a lot of value on my own. So again, that was my key learning and, my inspiration to start something on my own.
Excellent. Thank you, Geetha, for sharing that. And thank you, Sony, as well. So I guess looking at your answers, I believe Geetha came out as, the CTO person, the chief technical officer, because of her experience in data mining. Sony, when you mentioned about customer service, it kind of gravitated, I guess, you towards more of, the marketing customer side of things of a business. So that's good to see that you guys are able to bring those two skills together into Minerva. And we'll be touching on this as we move forward. And moving on to our third question. So can you please tell me, when did you both start Minerva and what was the inspiration behind this entrepreneurial venture?
Sure. So in 2015, it was our 20-year college reunion. So Geetha had come down from the US and we were just casually chatting up on our careers so far and what we've been doing. And we were thinking why not we do something together? Because we have had varied experience. Though I started off as a programmer, I probably did programming for the first 5 years. And later I moved to functional consulting, and from then on to pre-sales, business development, marketing, operations. So more focused on the customer side of things, while still, being with technology, right? Because working for technology companies. But Geetha has been very focused with technology. She worked as an architect and a product manager. So we had kind of complementary experience. And there were a lot of things that we learned during our career, working for different corporations and startups, that we thought we could do better, right? So we started talking about in 2015, and around 2016, we said, enough of talking, let's probably just start something, right? So 2016, we formed Minerva, and it's been a great journey since. Today, we have an LLC registered in Illinois, and we have a private limited here in India. We have a 30-member team. In 4 years, we have grown to a 30-member team. We have long-term clients, but we'll get to that. I'll let Geetha talk about what her experience.
And Geetha, do you want to pitch in?
Sure. So to piggyback on what Sony was saying, I'd like to quote John Doerr, the famous Silicon Valley VC. According to him, ideas are great, but execution is everything, and it takes a team to deliver, right? That was one of our foundations for starting Minerva. We needed a winning team, a unicorn of sort. If we could build that, then, the sky and the stars are a limit. But I could not do this with anyone random. It has to be someone that I trust immensely. And definitely Sony was the choice to go with.
Excellent. Thank you, Geetha, for sharing that. And moving on to our next question, could you please share about Minerva's business model?
So when we talk about business model, right, we have two sides of our business. When we started off, we still have the services side of the business. We were bootstrapped. We are still bootstrapped, although we raised friends and family round for funding. The services side has been keeping our lights on, helped us build the execution capability. And when we talk about services, we are primarily doing product engineering. So we work with long-term clients where we build the products for them. We are kind of like their technology arm, and the relationship is such. Right. They look to us as the technology partner of choice. But as of last December, we know that services can only take us to a certain level. And we had a lot of product ideas, but we took our time before we jumped into the product bandwagon. But as of last December, we started venturing into product. So our focus now, half the team is working on product. Most of the founder bandwidth is also spared towards the product at the moment. So from a business standpoint, we see products contributing probably 80% of the revenue by 2025. Today, it's the inverse. We still haven't started generating revenue from products. It's 100% services revenue that we are relying on. And these are mostly SaaS products.
Excellent. Thank you, Sony, for sharing that. And moving on to our next question. So what are Minerva's product or service offerings? And also what specific industries are you focused on?
So I'll take that. As Sony mentioned, right, we focus both on services and product. And we initially started with the services side. Our goal has always been to religiously focus on long-term customers, relationships with them, and build their product, translate their vision into reality by creating data-enabled products that leverage analytics and AI ML capabilities. So that's been our focus. And today, to name a couple, the two industries that we have been working with for more than 2 years has been the influencer marketing domain, and the other one has been the life sciences domain. Generally speaking, our implementation methodology is such that for the services side, we can be domain agnostic. However, before building a product, it is really, really important that the key position of the domain expert has to be filled. Otherwise, you're just going to be putting together a lot of technologies and people and resources and building something, but it'll be very challenging to determine the market fit. So that's been one side of our business. And since last December, we have been focusing a lot of our bandwidth and the team's bandwidth on developing our in-house product. Again, TRaiCE and TRaiIN, we'll talk about that a little bit later as well. But primarily, they are now focusing on the fintech sector.
And just want to add one thing to what Geetha said. The reason why we are focusing on the fintech sector, we do have an advisor in our book. Now, he's got 20 plus years of banking experience and primarily in the credit risk side. And Geetha also had worked on a big data banking product. Within the team, we have a lot of experience in the banking sector. And banking is one of those sectors where it's not very easy to get it. You need a lot of domain experience. And we felt we had the team and the experience and the capabilities within analytics that we can actually build AI and ML-enabled products for the banking sector.
Excellent. Thank you, Geetha and Sony, for sharing that. And I guess, looking back to the previous question, what you shared now, as a business startup or as a venture, going into the US market, providing services so that they would be cash flow into the business and then focusing on developing a product. I mean, I think it's a good idea to do that because, you need both. You need to have that cash flow to keep you moving. And, hopefully you would find a product fit for the market that would catch on like wildfire, if I can say that, hopefully. One thing you also mentioned is to work with domain experts. Sometimes I think people tend to think, okay, why am I spending so much time working in getting information about a market or data or talking to consultants? And I think it comes back to what you said, Geetha, like the importance of building that team, because if you have the wrong team for a specific product, you could probably end up completely in a different place compared to probably if you had a person who is a domain expert, as we say, and then building a product based on that person's experience or expertise and then bringing that product to market. It might be probably more time consuming. It might be more expensive, but then in the long term, that might actually take us in a better way. And so it's good to know that you're actually having all these thought process going on in Minerva, building the right team, getting domain experts on board, and also coming into the market in a service model, because that also gives you exposure in the market. People kind of know who you are. You don't really just come out in the blink of an eye and say, we are Minerva, we have this product. So you have that traction that you get in the market because people are aware of you. So it's good to know that these things are happening in your business. Geetha, was there something that you wanted to share on that?
Absolutely. So what we have noticed is the reality behind product development, Tony, is that in spite of wonderful ideas and great market fit, the reality is many product development teams, they fail due to poor execution. There's a lot of technical R&D that goes in, poor planning, and sometimes it's just too many cooks spoiling the broth. What ends up happening is you see millions of dollars wasted, hours and months probably wasted as well. This is a very saturated market. We get that. But this is where you can really make a striking difference if you come in with solid references and a sound track record from those references to whom you have proven that you can do this and you can execute on time, on budget, and meet the commitments that you promised at the onset. I think that is probably the differentiating factor between us and the rest of the companies similar to us, because we look at all these different components, which is a function of a good product development approach and team, which is, again, customer satisfaction, market fit, domain expertise, technologies, and all of these really have to row in the same direction to make the magic happen.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing that. And another thought that went through my mind when I looked at your website was, I think your strategy is basically, once you develop a product, you work with specific companies, let's say in the financial sector, and then you get that opportunity to actually solve their pain point. And also you get to develop your product in that process. There is an opportunity for them to be a reference for you. Because if you have one happy customer, then they would probably spread the word out there. So is that a strategy that you are doing?
Absolutely right, Tony. I think when the customer has a pain point and you are right there at the right time and you're able to solve this, you earn credibility and they know that you can be trusted for solving problems when things are really going wrong on their end. I think that validation is really important. If you're able to do that, there's nothing that's stopping you. I consider those pain points are as must-dos, right? They have to be done for that business to continue and to thrive. But all the others are bells and whistles, the nice to haves and the should haves. And typically, if you approach a customer with those, they'll say, well, this is really nice, but so long, we'll talk some other time. But when it's a pain point, you can add true value and establish that trust and credibility, which is basically the foundation for a future relationship and so on.
Thank you, Geetha. And moving on to our next question, I believe we have touched on this answer in our previous questions, but I presume with Minerva's primary focus on the US market, competition would be intense, even though people say, there's 320 million people, but then I'm sure proportionate to that, there would be also businesses out there. What do you think are Minerva's competitive advantages in comparison to others in the data analytics business space?
What I'll say is where we have found to be really successful is to work with small and medium enterprises who need a strong technical leadership, project management, and also a skilled development team who can execute and deliver on time. That to us has been something that we prove, and we take that very seriously. And we do this by eliminating any technical R&D and other reasons that could typically delay timelines and then not meet the expectations of the customers. And again, back to, those sound references and continuing to do the solid execution and highlighting and addressing customer pain points along the way. All of these have to be done daily for continued success.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing that, Geetha. And I think what you're sharing is basically the importance of being consistent. Some people speak about being consistent as a personal goal, but I think as a business as well, the business ought to be consistent in its services, be it the advertisements we put out there, be it the initial interaction that customers have with the company, the first call that we answer, how the customer perceives the business, and then maintaining that consistency, because once we let the ball go, it's very hard to bring it up to the expected level. So I think that is very good to hear, Geetha, that you as a team, you're working on solving customers' pain points, but also trying to do it in a very consistent manner. And I guess it all rests upon the team you build at the end of the day. So thank you.
One other fact which is overlooked is communication. With all the clients that we have today, Geetha and I maintain a very close relationship with them. And with the execution and the communication, and we can't undermine the importance of communication there. We listen to the clients. And I think that has made a big difference as well.
Excellent, Sony. Thank you so much for sharing that. That's a very good point. I was talking to a gentleman who's based out of Sydney. He said, his entire business was based on customer communication. Sometimes customers, we think that, they need to get the best every time consistently, but sometimes it's also about being upfront and honest with them, saying like, there's a delay in the delivery of this product because, of these struggles, but we are trying to overcome those challenges. And I think building a healthy, honest communication with your customers or potential customers tend to help in building trust. And I think that is good to hear from you, Sony.
So we have a weekly touch point with our clients, with our customers, and they know that we have their best interest in mind. And I think that has gone a long way because they have that trust.
Excellent. Thank you, Sony, for sharing that. And moving on to our next question, could you please share about TRaiCE and TRaiIN, two products that Minerva has developed? I believe the focus on the financial sector in the US. And also, how are they different to other data analytics tools that are already available in the US market?
Sure. So I'll start with TRaiCE. Like we said, when we started thinking about our products, first thing that came to our mind was, okay, where do we focus? You can go on a tangent and build a product and look for a product market fit. But the best thing is finding a pain point and addressing that. So while we were discussing about a product roadmap, one of our advisors who has been in the banking side and who works on the credit risk side, he said, Sony and Geetha, here is a pain point that I face today within the team. And he works on the loan portfolio management side a lot. So when you look at the lending scenario with banks, you have the loan origination side and you have the portfolio management side where you look at the health of your loan book. So TRaiCE is meant to address that. Today, it's done in a very cumbersome manner. It's manual. So if you look at most of the banks, you're not talking about the top 10% of banks in the world like the Citibank, but any mid-sized bank, if you look at it, they have a very manual way of doing the portfolio management. And the easiest thing was to automate that and add some intelligence to it. So TRaiCE, at the core of it, we like to call it an augmented intelligence system, which kind of automates what the portfolio team does.
You summed it up really well, Sony. And, at the end of the day, it's an augmented intelligence system. So it combines data from third-party sources along with the internal data of the financial institution and helps automate a lot of the manual processes activities that a typical portfolio manager would do as part of their monitoring. So isolating those and then automating them, not just for one or two, but for your entire customer base in an ongoing manner, almost on a daily basis, it just boosts the productivity that the portfolio managers can get. And from there on, there are insights such as, okay, can I project any early delinquencies? Are there any warnings that I need to look out for? Or is this portfolio even eligible for auto renewal? And those types of decisions can easily be taken using TRaiCE. And that's why it's an augmented intelligence system, which is constantly learning as well.
So in addition to the point that we said, which was like automating the processes that the portfolio team does, one other big reason for us to think about TRaiCE in a big way was the fact that when we started thinking about TRaiCE, there was no COVID. All we had was bankers were predicting a recession because, worldwide markets were thinking about recession that was going to happen in 2020, 2021 kind of time frame. So typical portfolio delinquencies would be, or NPAs as we call it in India, would be between 1% to 2% in a healthy scenario. But when you're talking about a recession kind of environment, you're probably looking at 3 to 5% portfolio delinquency. So businesses going delinquent in your portfolio. With COVID, what has happened is all of a sudden, this is probably bankers are talking about really stark situations where it could be 10% portfolio delinquency, or 1 in every 3rd business could be going delinquent or going down. So we are probably staring at even 30% portfolio delinquencies. Between December 2019 and now, the relevance of TRaiCE is even more. Portfolio managers are worried about, no, I have this loan portfolio. I want to know which of these businesses might go delinquent, because there's a risk that 1 in 3rd is going to go delinquent. And I would like to know who has a bigger chance of going delinquent. And TRaiCE addresses just that. It can go through the entire portfolio and look at the risk profile of each of those businesses within the portfolio and kind of score them.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing that. And I think it seems to be a product for the times. I'm sure portfolio managers, they would be able to predict a lot of things during the good times. But I think with the diversification of portfolios, because to reduce risk, having something like TRaiCE on board, from what I'm hearing from you, would add a lot of value in making good decisions moving forward. So thank you for sharing that. And Geetha, would you like to share about TRaiN?
Absolutely. TRaiN is a child of TRaiCE. That's how we'd like to present it. In a sense, it's basically a platform that allows users, particularly business users, to execute and retrain AI and ML models from within a web application without any technical know-how or without any technical knowledge as to how those machine learnings work and how one should be tweaking them or updating them. We ran into this idea primarily when, again, working on TRaiCE and looking at different models, and then knowing that any financial institution that where we onboard TRaiCE would have existing models, and they would want to run that. And it would be really great to be able to incorporate that within TRaiN and have TRaiN be a challenger to what TRaiCE does. But all said, TRaiN is still industry agnostic. You can load any ML model in any domain and still get a lot of value from it, especially for business users who do not have the knowledge and who are usually reliant on data scientists and data analysts for the insights and reports related to ML models. So we thought it would be really cool if we could deploy a platform where they themselves can be self-reliant using the tools that this platform is able to provide them with.
Thank you for sharing that. I guess, if I see a portfolio manager in the future and he looks very confident, so I would presume he's either using TRaiCE or TRaiN or both of them simultaneously. Moving on to our next question. So has the current COVID-19 pandemic affected Minerva's operations?
Thankfully, not that much, because ever since first week of March, the entire team, they have been working remotely, and we have been continuing to chug along and deliver on our commitments and deliverables and projects. And alongside, we have also continued to develop beta releases of both TRaiCE and TRaiN. So things are going good. Can the pandemic go away and things get better? Absolutely. But during this time, due to the work and the bandwidth required within the team, we've also been fortunate enough to make a few hires who have also contributed, and we hope to continue this trend.
Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing that. And moving on to our next question. So moving forward, what are your plans for Minerva?
As we said, we are in the product side of the business, so we are focusing on that. What we see moving forward is more focus on the product side of the business. And we recently got inducted into an accelerator in the US called New Chip Accelerator. It's a virtual accelerator. And one of the key reasons why we joined New Chip was, one, get access to clients because of the accelerator and the kind of VCs and businesses that are associated with it. It's much easier for us to tell our story and reach a larger audience. And of course, for our product side of the business to grow rapidly, we need access to funding. So we are looking at probably raising a seed funding somewhere between $1.5 to $2 million. So that's a kind of target that we are looking at in terms of a funding, which can help us grow to the levels that we are looking for to grow in the next 4 to 5 years. We want to be able to capture around 10% of the banking market in terms of the portfolio management side. And for that, we need to grow the team to probably, from what we are today, about 30-member team to probably around 500-member team to work on the products and also service the customers, because banking customers, you need to have a team to onboard them and to support them. So it's critical for us to have access to funds and also access to these relationships to actually take us to the next level. We also see us coming up with few products, but our focus for the next 2 to 3 years would be working with TRaiN and TRaiCE and taking them to market and maturing before we venture into other products. We'll continue to grow the services side of the business because one, it helps us with the cash flow, but like we said, the products are probably going to bring in more cash flow, but the feedback that we get from the product engineering side of the business is really immense. We get to know what people want, and we get to do a lot of R&D, which is very exciting always, and we build relationships. Nothing beats that, and credibility.
Excellent. Thank you, Sony, for sharing that. And it's very good to know that you've actually joined an accelerator in the US. And I'm sure you would have done a bit of research before joining the particular accelerator that you've mentioned, because I think accelerators, for one, gives you a community, you know what I mean? Right. And definitely to a lot of contacts and information. But I guess it's also that human element because, when you are having other probably fintech businesses in that community, we can always learn and leverage on each other's strengths. And I think that is very encouraging and positive, and also good to see that you're actually going to focus more on your products TRaiCE and TRaiIN, because if you want that 10% market share, Minerva's team has to make sure that it meets the market expectations. And a simple question, so how did you come up with this name TRaiCE and TRaiIN?
TRaiCE was actually, we have to give credit to one of our advisors. He's the one who came up with that. And then from then on, it was easier to name the second one TRaiN. And we actually have a third product called TRaiL, which has to deal with time tracking, project management, etc. And we are the first beta users of that product. We use that to track all our projects and work within the company. So it just turned out that these are all data-enabled products. They all leverage not only analytics, but also AI capabilities. And that's why they're all spelled as TRaiCE, TRaiIN. And the last one is, ends with the L.
We highlight the AI part of it, yes. Letting the people know that these are AI-enabled products. And at the core of it, if you look at the name, right, TRaiCE, because what we are doing is we are tracing the health of the portfolio. That's what we are doing. We are tracing every business in that portfolio, and that's what we do with TRaiCE. With TRaiN, we are helping train models. There is some sort of a thing behind the name as well. And with TRaiL, we are actually maintaining an audit trail of what everyone does. Wanted to just mention that with Minerva also, there's more to the name than just the name. Geetha, maybe you explain that.
So that's one of my favorite soapboxes, Tony. So here you go. Minerva is actually the Etruscan goddess of art and wisdom. And again, since we do data analytics work, it was an apt name. And the other thing is Minerva is a goddess, and the female element, it talks to women empowerment and so on. And therefore, we chose Minerva as the name.
Excellent. So it's very good to know that you have really thought about all these, fine details. And moving on to our last question. So what are the life and business lessons that you would like to share with someone who is planning to start a business in the US?
So the fundamentals of starting and succeeding in any business, irrespective of the geography, is the same. I've worked with product startups in the US. I've come back to India. I've been very involved with the startup community here. The rules are the same. The single biggest lesson that I have learned while working with a product startup is you have to do whatever it takes to keep your customers happy. That's the only thing. No matter where you start your business, what kind of business you run, whether it's a technology business or any kind of business. One of the things that I've learned is technology is just an enabler. At the core of it, you have to listen to your customers. You have to understand their pain points and use technology, because we are a technology company. We come with a computer science background. All we do is use technology to solve their problems. As long as we have that clearly in our mind, saying that, you don't focus on the technology, but you focus on the problem and use technology to solve that. And you listen to your customers, listen to the things that they tell you and the things that sometimes are not said. As long as you do that and you pay close attention to that relationship, you'll be successful.
Thank you, Sony, for sharing that. And Geetha, would you like to add your points as well?
So customer obsession, that's something Sony's already, talked about quite a bit. So I'm going to leave that. To me, there are two more points which really resonate really well. And this is the type of culture we try to build within the team. Because as I said before, Tony, without a team, there isn't really any company. You really need a team who's going to think about the ordinary, right? So 2 points there. One is continuously learn. Gone are the days where you can say, hey, this is how we have done it so far, so we'll continue doing it this way. You have to continuously learn to keep up, with the tides of change. That's one. And then the second one is doing a little bit more for a particular task than what is asked. In other words, instead of striving for perfection, strive to be a little more exceptional. Strive for a little more excellence in whatever you do. And if you can build that culture within your team, then that is, to me, the true recipe for success. Those are my two other points that I'd like to add.
Excellent, Sony and Geetha. Thank you so much for sharing those wonderful points. And it's very encouraging to see your journey. When you look at businesses, people tend to think, they're probably the smartest people in town. That's where the business succeeded. Definitely you need smart people. But I think the fundamental foundation of a business journey is trust. And it's on that trust that you actually build the building blocks. And it's very positive and encouraging to know that both of you were studying in the same engineering college and that friendship has actually flourished to where it is today, where both of you are co-founders to your business. And as you said, Sony, trust is something that is built over a period of time. In your case, it's probably more than 30 years. So which is great. You can always leverage on each other's strengths and you can be sure that both of you are looking after each other's best interests. So that's very positive. And I think the strengths that you bring into the equation, so Sony being focused on the customer side of things, because it's not an easy place to focus on. You have customers of all dynamics and you have to make sure that you are able to cater to everyone's needs. Sometimes you might have to say no to a customer because that might not be worth your time. Sometimes you have to do the extra mile with a customer because you might realize that they would bring in more business into the future and they are good people to work with. So there's so many dynamics. Every relationship has to be looked at in its own merit. And I think, Geetha, in your case, having that US experience, especially with AT&T and working in the data mining space, so having that hands-on experience in that tech space is such an important or valuable asset that you bring into the equation. And the thing is, you have agreements on a lot of things. You are able to see eye to eye on majority of the topics, which is great because, it avoids a lot of stressful moments. And I'm sure in your own, strengths, you bring those positives as well. And I think your focus of having a winning team, which is an important thing. It's not about simply bringing a product and pushing it into the market. It's actually making sure that you have a good product that people actually add their reference to so that others can have access to the same product or service. So you're building on the long-term strategic goal into the market. And that is very positive. And it's also good to know that you value experts from within the market. And I think this is one of probably a mistake that a lot of businesses overseas do. They think they have a perfect product for the market without really researching on the market or without really having any idea of what really the ground realities or the context is. And then they tend to fail because they're not able to communicate. Take, for example, the Taiwanese market. You're developing a product for that market. The way the customers look at that product in the US market might be very different. You know what I mean? Be it the language, be it the style of communication. The pain points might be different to some extent. Customizing your product and services to meet those specific market requirements is a challenge. But I think once you overcome that challenge, then it becomes much more easier. And it's also very positive to see that you are part of an accelerator team because now you have a community around you to support you and encourage you, because sometimes entrepreneurship journeys can be hard and sometimes it can be frustrating, especially when building the team. The team are all human beings. They have their strengths and weaknesses. They have their complaints and positives. So, trying to manage a team, I think, is the biggest challenge. So it's good to know that you're doing your best, and good to also know that there is a story behind this business. It's not something that you just walk up and said, okay, let's start a business. There is a story behind it. Every name has a meaning behind it. And it's good to see that you are thinking of it as a long-term business venture than a short-term, stint. So that is very positive. And it's also good that you mentioned about continuously learning. I guess that is the AI aspect of what you're doing. AI is always trying to learn from the data that is presented and, bring out best results out of it. It's my very naive look at AI, but I hope you'll excuse me for that. So thank you for your time. Thank you for the inputs that you've given us today. I wish you the very best with Minerva moving forward. I believe you have a great thing happening and I wish you all success into the future. So thank you, Sony and Geetha, for your time.
Thank you so much, Tony, for this opportunity to talk to you and tell our story.
And we look forward to being in touch.
All the best.